So, let me tell you a couple stories about assumptions. First one's about Colleen. Now, I first met Colleen when I was running the psychiatric day treatment program, and she was referred to me because she was getting into fights at school. And they said, she's got so many challenging behaviors. She's getting into fights several times a week. We can't cope. Take her. And we said, okay. And what we discovered very quickly was Colleen will not get out of anyone's face if they get into her face first. So if somebody gets into Colleen's face, she will not back off. And if neither one will back off, it will escalate. And it will become physical. Well, we were running a place where we didn't support people getting into each other's face. At the school, there wasn't enough adults around, and there was a lot of teenage hormones. So people would get into each other's face, and some people would get into Colleen's face, and boom. Well, we had no difficulty at all. She was a pleasure to have around. And then her dad moved because he's in the military, and Colleen moved with her, and I lost track of her. And some time later, some years later, I'm at the University of Maryland, and one of the things I'm doing is I'm running an inpatient behavioral program, which was a bad idea, because people get stuck. But it was a good idea at the time. We just learned later that it was bad. But we had a place for people to be. And I get a call from the equivalent of the deputy minister, who's in charge of services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the state of Maryland. And she calls me and she says, Michael, today you're going to prison. And I was going, I didn't do anything. She said, you're going to the women's prison. And I'm relieved, because I know I'm not eligible. You know? She said, you're going to go to the women's prison, and you're going to pick up a woman there, and you're going to bring her back to your inpatient unit, because she has to get out. And it turns out that the people responsible for the correctional officers there had told the person in charge, the warden, who had told the person in charge of corrections, who was minister, who told the other minister, and it came back down the chain, get her out. And I go there, and it's Colleen. I said, well, where is she? And they said, she's in the infirmary. And I went, is she sick? They said, no, it's the only place we can keep her safe. Because they said, do you know that once somebody gets in her face, she won't back down? I went, yeah. She said, do you know who's here? And I had just, in the process of getting to where this meeting was, gone through several parts of the prison. I knew who was there, a bunch of really scary people. The women who worked there, 5 times tougher than me. I would do anything, any of them said, in a heartbeat, because I don't want to die. And they just would give you the impression, I am tough, and you would believe it. And Colleen wound up in the women's prison by this kind of circuitous path. It turned out that her dad had come back to retire in this area. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Dad has an issue with people getting in his face, so Colleen and her dad would get into physical fights. Police would be called, and they would call, and they had de-escalation training, and they would de-escalate and go away, and then they'd get called again. Well, one day Colleen's luck was bad because this policeman apparently had skipped de-escalation training, got in her face and said, "Young woman, calm down." And Colleen said, "Oh yeah," and wound up cuffed in the back of the car, taken to the hospital, where a psychiatrist got in her face. She went to the state psychiatric facility where Nurse Ratched worked. Now, some of you are going, "Nurse Ratched?" You need to see One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's a classic film. And in that film, there's a woman named Nurse Ratched who is the rule enforcer for this unit. And this Nurse Ratched got in Colleen's face and said, "You will follow the rules here." And Colleen said, "Oh yeah." And she got Nurse Ratched out of her face physically. And Nurse Ratched filed charges. Colleen wound up in the women's section of the county jail where she met a matron who had the same management philosophy, and with another stop, wound up in the women's 10, and we got her out. And she's sitting in this inpatient unit, and I'm going, "She's not going to stay here. We're going to get her out." And I get a call from one of the people in charge of the system. She said, "Michael, you've gone too far this time. She is too dangerous to live in the community." Well, I don't know if any of you have ever been in this circumstance, but in my career, there have been several times when I just have to play I Bet My Job. Have any of you been in that situation where you go, "I'm going to do this because I have to"? And chips will fall where they may. So I said, "I'm getting Colleen out." And we did some planning with her, and we discovered that if you wanted Colleen to be successful in the community, you just needed to know a few things. This is way sparse for what we teach. Just too few words up there, but works in PowerPoint. Colleen has to feel respected. She has to feel like she has control, and she has a compulsion to be helpful. And she will do nothing if you order her to do it. She will do anything for you if you ask. She will stop her life and do something for you if you ask. And so, we got Colleen an apartment in a part of Baltimore that's referred to as transitional, where she wanted to live. Neighborhood that made me a little nervous. And I'm walking down the street with her one day, shortly after she moved in, to see how she's doing, and I'm going, "Colleen, are you sure you're safe here?" And she looked at me and she said, "I'm safe here. I'm not sure about you." And she's walking along and she looks up, sees this guy in the corner, and goes, "Hey, Trevor." Trevor goes, "Hey, Colleen." And I go, "Who's he?" My inner dad was coming out. And she said, "Oh, he sells drugs." And I'm going, "How do you know him?" She said, "Well, I carry his grandma's groceries." Colleen would go to the grocery store, and they're, in a city, you don't drive to the grocery store, you carry your bags back. You might have a little cart that you carry. And Colleen sees somebody who seems a bit frail. She goes, "I'm going to carry your bags." She's a little aggressive at helping. You can't say, "No, you're not," because she's going to carry your bags. And when she gets them up to your apartment, she's going to go, "So, do you grocery shop every Thursday? I'll be there." So Colleen's reputation in this neighborhood is this remarkably helpful woman. And the people who are potentially dangerous are saying, "Don't mess with her." She was actually under protection. But we did have a couple of issues, but they weren't what you would think. Because Colleen wouldn't go to a traditional day service as somebody who uses the service, but she would go to a traditional day service where there were people who needed physical assistance, and she would help provide it. She would volunteer. She also cannot pass up a stray cat. So if you wanted to, work with Colleen, you had to operate a cat outplacement service. Because she would bring cats in, and you can only have so many cats in your apartment before it becomes a problem. And she says you're not taking them to the Humane Society. They need good homes. And occasionally she takes in a stray human. And this is a potential significant issue, but what we discovered is Colleen now has all of these community relationships, and people will call up the agency staff that support her. They've got, the neighbors have the phone number with Colleen's permission, and say, Colleen's got a stray human, don't think it's a good one. And if you're staff, you go there and say, Colleen, so, who are you helping out right now? And she'll go, oh, Sarah. And you go, okay, tell me about Sarah. Is she contributing to the household? No. Does she get money? Yeah. She's sharing expenses? No. And pretty soon Colleen goes, that's not right. Sarah either contributes or she's out of here. We go, And Colleen, because of her willingness to support and share, got an award from the governor of Maryland as Volunteer of the Year. And I don't know how it happens in Ontario, but if you are the leader of the province, if you are, the head political guy, you do not actually do this all by yourself. You have your little entourage assisting you. You have the photographer, and the plaques that you get for Volunteer of the Year are handed to you by somebody else. And I was there when she got her plaque, and the person who handed the governor the plaque was the very woman who told me she was too dangerous. And I took great pleasure. But it was the assumptions that she was making. So, in many instances, what we see for people is tunnel vision on health and safety. Or it's choice. Do whatever the hell you want. What we're saying is it needs to be both. It's got to be both and, not either or.